Hello, everyone. I wanted to take a few minutes to share a couple thoughts that have been rattling in around my brain today, which is Monday, the day we kind of officially came back to work and we were relaunched. And like many of you, at least this morning anyway, I woke up and I was feeling really kind of uneasy. And so I spent some time thinking about what it is that may have been causing that. Because I'd been doing pretty good up until spring break. And I had this realization, I think, this morning that kind of what we knew was going to be inevitable in terms of needing to work differently through the rest of the school year is now a reality. I'd kind of always, been thinking about, if we get to that date where we're able to go back into our classrooms, things will kind of go back to normal. But I think this morning it really dawned on me that, that's not happening. And I was feeling, I don't know if anxious was the word, just really discombobulated. I couldn't really put any words on it. And then during the connection over coffee, the Monday, Friday kind of get together thing where staff can just get together, hang out. We kind of talk about a few topics here and there. It dawned on me just prior to that what I was really lacking or what I was struggling with was clarity. Not knowing what the work was going to look like. And I've kind of made that a focus this week, and a goal is to try to get some clarity around some things. I started thinking about what would I normally be doing during the spring. It would be assessment season, and so we'd be getting ready for proctor meetings and getting ready to monitor assessments through May. I also proctor a few assessments for some virtual academy students, which keeps me connected to the assessment world and what it's like to proctor. There would have been new science kits that would have been rolled out 3, 4, 5, so probably some building walkthroughs and visiting just to see how those are going. And so the work looks much different now, and I think part of that is not knowing what that is and what it looks like to have a central office role and try to provide help and support from home versus, being in an office. And just like many of you are wrestling now with what does remote or distance learning look like? How does this work? And I think some of that uneasiness is because of that lack of clarity and just not sure of what it looks like. It can cause some anxiousness and almost some paralysis of like, where do we even start? And so I wanted to share a couple things that are kind of helping me work through it that maybe could assist or help you as you're kind of grappling with some of these things. And so one of the things I did this morning is I went to a book that I've read bits and pieces a couple different times. It's called High Performance Habits, How Extraordinary People Become That Way. And the first chapter of this book focuses on seeking clarity. And I wanted to read just a part of this from the book and then share kind of maybe 4 questions that I'm wrestling with to try to get some clarity around some of this work. And so from the book, it says, clarity is not a personality trait that some are blessed to have and others are not. Just as a power plant doesn't have energy, it transforms or generates energy. You don't have any specific reality. You generate your reality. In the same line of thinking, you don't have clarity, you generate it. You generate clarity by asking questions, researching, trying new things, sorting through life's opportunities, and sniffing out what's right for you. Clarity is the child of careful thought and mindful experimentation. And so I started thinking about that idea of generating clarity by asking questions and some careful thought and probably experimenting and trying some things. And so there are 4 questions that I'm kind of grappling with this week that I'd like to share. One is, what is the work and how will it look different? And so there's no assessment, right? So for me, there's no assessment work to oversee and to help support. So what else, kind of is there to do? If there's no classroom walkthroughs, no visits, what does that entail? There's always professional learning. And so some of that now is, well, what does professional learning look like in this environment, in this atmosphere? And so using that to lead into the next one, because there's unknowns, there's also a question around what new skills will I need to develop? I've been trained and had experience in facilitating meetings face to face with 30 people in a room, 50 people in a room. But how do you facilitate good conversation and discussion remotely through a computer like this? How do you use those tools to make time productive? So, there's some new skills that I'm going to have to learn and set aside and begin to do a little research and learning and some experimentation on. And so maybe as you're thinking about what this remote and distance learning looks like, what are some of the new skills that you're going to have to learn? How do we keep consistent with the important things like relationships? This is how I would build relationships with kids in my classroom. Now, how do I do that and keep those relationships going and intact through a medium like this? How do we provide students choice and voice in this versus a classroom setting? Like, these are all questions and may require some new skills. And so that's the second question I'm wrestling with, is what new skills will I need to develop as we embark in this work? Another one is, how can I add value and support to others through this time? What does it look like to be home and providing support when people are at home? I don't really know what that looks like yet. I don't even know how to access the support they need. It's not as easy as popping into a meeting and just listening periodically, or it could be, but that's going to look different. And so that's another thing I'm kind of working through, seeking clarity on. And the last one, and this maybe is the important one, is to think about, what are the main feelings I want to cultivate in my life, relationships, and work? Kind of how do I want to show up every day? Because it could be very easy to go from waking up in the morning to a chair, drinking some coffee, and if I'm not careful, maybe some routines or habits that don't keep me as energized or as sharp or as on point maybe as I might need to be in order to show up. And so one of the things I'm trying to do each week is make sure my calendar reflects 4 main areas that I'm paying attention to. And those 4 areas are work. So what does the work look like? What are the work goals that I want to get done by the end of the week? Health. How am I addressing my mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health during the week? What kind of learning do I need to do? And that kind of goes back to that skill development, is what have I learned this week that helps build a new skill, that helps me probably be more productive through the work part. And then also the last one is paying attention to connection and family. How am I making sure that work isn't dominating too much, or that the family connection time isn't kind of, in this case, I guess, taking up too much time, which sounds bizarre and weird, but it can be very easy to feel like we need to be attentive there, but we also know there's work to do. So during the each day, kind of calendaring out, and each week asking myself, what needs to be done for work? How am I taking care of my health? Where's the time during the day and the week that I'm doing some new learning? And where am I being intentional about connecting with family and other people? So those are just kind of the things I'm wrestling with around clarity, trying to ask these questions every day. What does that work look like? What are the new skills that I need to be learning? How can I add value and support? Because right now it's not clear. It's not the same as if I was showing up to the office every week. And I think once I get through some of that, that will help kind of resolve some of the angst. It will start to feel a little more peaceful, because then we'll have some control over some things. And so I'd ask you just to consider, where do you need clarity? Where do you need to spend some time asking yourself some questions, maybe asking some other people? Because I think once you're clear, and then you have a set course, it's almost like a roadmap. And right now our destination has kind of been set for us finally, that we know this is the route we're on now until the end of the school year as it currently sits. And so now what does that look like? We know why we do what we do every day when we show up for kids, and being there for them. Kind of the how and the what has changed. How do we do it now? So I encourage you to spend some time asking yourself some questions. What's important for you to get some clarity around? Write it out and just keep refining it each week. You won't have all the answers by the end of this first week. I don't expect to have these questions fully answered and off and running at the start of next week, but something I hope to keep coming back to, and getting a little more clear each day and each week on this is the work, this is how I can show up, this is how I can contribute, this is how I can support. And so think about those, maybe jot them down, spend a little time with that. Always be gracious to yourself and to others as we work through this. But as Mr. McKay mentioned this morning, we are going to get through this. We're going to get out. Find ourselves on the other side of this whenever that is, and some pretty powerful things can happen through that process. So if you have any questions around the clarity piece, or you want to bounce some ideas, I'm happy to engage in that conversation with you. Otherwise, please remember during this time to take care of yourself, and then in turn also take care of each other. Thank you.